because we're preserved. Now I have to
Okay,
get this thing.
so today is March 23rd, and I have Kamillia Compton Hardy and Linnea Wilson Brand is also with us, and we're starting a discussion. And Kamillia is going to tell Linnea about the family newsletters that we did.
Did you say the date?
I thought I did. March 23rd, 2022. Maybe I did.
Okay. Yeah, okay. No, you probably did.
I don't remember.
I think it might be interesting also to say that I am in Orange, California. You're in Brigham City, Utah.
Right.
Linnea, where are you?
I am in Deweyville, Utah, which
A
is
suburb of, it's a suburb of Brigham City.
no, I think people in Deweyville would be so offended. They're like it's a very yeah, I wanted to say self-sufficient, but there's not even a gas station or a bank or anything. But
Do you have a post office?
No. We have a city hall. There used to be actually a big-ish school, a high school, and it burned down and was never replaced.
Oh.
There's a church. As far as I know, that's it. The town hall and the church. There's a park.
Yeah.
It's kind of old. It was established in, I think, 1864. It's older than Pleasant View. It's close to Tremont, though. So.
Well, the way you make it sounds like Deweyville is a really good name for this place.
It's very rural.
I would say so. And I wonder who Mr. and Mrs. Dewey were. Anyway, this is all an aside, of course. Orange, California used to be named for all the orange trees.
Right.
And it was settled in the 1800s. I can't give you the date. But of course now, the only orange trees that exist are in people's backyards, if they have one. In any case, the Compton Union, as it was called that because actually it was sort of a play on the Compton onion, but it was called Union. And Daddy named our first reunion that was the one that Tom and Afton put together, wasn't it?
I don't know. Was that the first one? That's the first one I remember. I guess that was in 1976.
I think that was the first one.
Okay.
Okay. And so we called it the Compton Union rather than reunion. And I don't know if I was given the assignment or if I took it upon myself to do a family newsletter. And I asked for donations I wanted first person stories of what was going on in everybody's lives. And Mother and Daddy also did a little page together. So it was quite rudimentary compared to what we can do today. But I just used the not mimeograph, that's really elementary. No, the ditto, and not that either. Just a minute. What?
A copy machine.
Thank you so much. I'm going way back into the 50s.
You just
Anyway.
photocopied off the different letters that you got and stuff. Is that right? Is that what you're trying to say?
I set it up in the form of a booklet and
Right.
copied the everything that I got from everyone. So I did that for quite a few years. I can't remember how many. I think after that, Kathleen might have taken over. So I don't remember how many of those she did. That would have been in the late 70s and the 80s.
Right. It was. Oh, this says I'm not signed in. Why am I not signed in? I was going to go to the folder where I had them all online, and it's telling me I need to sign back into my Google account. You're not signed in. Well, this is not helpful.
Linnea,
Yeah.
you're some of the really fun pieces that were submitted were from your father.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Fishing, I know there's a picture there of him going fishing with nieces and nephews, I think. I can't recall. Anyway, I wanted it to be first person because I think that's so much better than trying to recap what someone else has said. It loses the flavor.
Yeah.
So I didn't photocopy them. I scanned these in and they're all in PDF format. I've got them all in one folder in this Google Drive. And
Can you enlarge it? Yes.
well, there, I just opened one of them up. And so since it's in a PDF format, you just start at the top and scroll down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all there. And again, there's letters from everybody, and there's dad. So this was the May 1982 one, and it says you were the editor, Kamillia.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, lots of fun reading here.
I also,
what, Kamillia? I also
put family history. I had some letters from Grandpa Chandler's, one of Grandpa Chandler's sisters, for instance, who wrote a little thing about her brother. So, and I had some things in there on Joseph Grafton hubby that were said by, I think, Brigham Young, but I can't remember. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I just, as Artie started scanning through, I saw one of the first beginnings of one of those letters said, "Dearly beloved family." And I just love that because I have a blog. I don't keep it up very well, but it's one of my favorite ways to begin or to address who I'm speaking to as my dearly beloveds, because I just assume that if anyone's reading it, it's going to be my mom and sisters, and probably nobody else. So that makes me really happy. Was that you, Kamillia, saying dearly beloved family? That sounds like you.
I have a feeling it was Daddy. It might have been a letter that he and, a call came in and I've lost you. How can I get back?
I don't know. We still hear you. Your screen's gone blank. Oh, she's gone. That's how she'll get back. She'll hang up and then rejoin.
Well, that's a treasure. So you'll have, do you know if that was yearly? I mean, I can get out and look at it, but.
Well, it wasn't consistent. Sometimes, welcome back, Kamillia. Sometimes it was yearly. Sometimes, I think there's a few times, I think it was more than once a year. And then sometimes it skipped 2 or 3 years. So
I don't know. I have a feeling it was, that's a long time ago. I can't imagine I skipped a few years.
Well, maybe I'm remembering it not quite right, but it does seem like there were some years skipped in there.
Well, I have all the copies. I have of each one that I did. I think I might even have some that Kathleen did.
Well, double check. So I'm pretty sure I've shared, and in fact, I'll go back to the screen share and let's just double check.
I think it was Maureen who said she had copies of every issue, and she sent them to you.
Yes, and I've put them on here,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to look to see who I have shared this with. I want to make sure I shared it with you. Yes, I have shared it with you, Kamillia, and if you want me to resend it or something, I can. But you've got this. You've got a somewhere in your email. You received an email that has a link to this folder that has all of these, and you can double, if you can find the printed copies you have, you can double check and make sure they're all here.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That means I'll have to get it. I guess when you were here, I didn't get into the top drawer of that filing cabinet, did I? I think we just dealt with the box.
Yes, yes, you're right. We just dealt with the box.
Okay.
And it looks like I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Did I count that right? 6, 7. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I see 10 of them here. So anyway, that's that.
I think the last one I did had mother and daddy, a picture of them standing on the, did the log house have a balcony or a porch that on the second floor? Can you remember?
Might be it. That might be this one right here.
Yes, that was it. I have that in my mind as the last one I did.
So this was, it says March to June 1984.
That's when I started. That's when I started back to school.
And Grandma, you started back to school in 1985? 84. Mike, can I ask how old you were when you went back to school?
Probably 47.
That is just lovely.
Thank you.
So this isn't a very good copy, but that's your sister. Oh no, that's your daughter, Chris. Sorry, get mixed up. Anyway, that's your daughter right there. It's hard to see, but anyway.
Okay, so I think that, you know, at the time you really don't know when you're doing something I did have a strong feeling of wanting, what was my feeling anyway? Well, it really had to do with family and wanting to preserve. I wanted family to communicate with each other through this medium. And I wanted to preserve them. That's what I guess I mean. And that's why it was so important for me to have them in the first person.
And Mother passed away not long after your last issue, the last 1984 issue. She passed away
in 85. Was it March?
Yes, it was March of 85 that she passed away, if I remember correctly.
I think so. And I had started back to school. And so I think that's why I was no longer doing it, because I used the equipment at First American Title. I would stay after work and work on the typewriter there and use their copy machine as well. So when I went back to school, I had quit work and I was also very absorbed with school. So anyway, so just for your information, Linnea, I got my master's when I was 50.
I love that. I made an attempt to start back in school about, I can't remember how many years ago, but I would have still been, I might have been 48, 49. And it was, I loved it. It was so good for me, but it was also, you know, I was in classes with kids in their 20s. I stuck out like a sore thumb, but it worked. It worked. I had lovely teachers and the students were lovely. And it was just really exhilarating, but also took, a certain amount of gumption. So I just love that, that you got your degree in your early 50s, right?
I actually had turned 50 in October and I had my master's show in December. So at the end,
your master's degree was in painting or art or something?
Yes, I majored in art, in drawing and painting. I had a degree in English that I got in about 1970 or something. It was a good 10 years, a little more than that, I guess, when I went back to school. But I really had a longing. I couldn't decide. This is really not the point of this, is that I couldn't decide between English, art history, or studio art. And I narrowed it down because English would have required a PhD. Studio art history, which I adored, I still wouldn't really know how to paint. So I decided to do studio art, and then I could always read and study art history. That was my thinking. And I'm not sorry. It was wonderful. It was a whole different world from sitting at the typewriter in somebody else's office.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't have much immortality now, but I had much less then because I had just my initials, KMH/OB at the bottom of the letter. That
Oh,
doesn't mean anything to you, does it? That was just saying that I typed it and he dictated it and I corrected it.
okay.
Okay, so enough.
Well, so any memories of our mother, Mary Nola Chandler Compton, that you want to share? Any or thoughts or what's on your mind regarding mom, Kamillia?
Tell me what age she was when you first remember her.
Well, I have memories of her in Maryland when I was 3 years old.
And you were born.
I don't know
when-
I don't know how old she was when I was 3.
No, okay, but tell me what's the year of your birth?
So I was born in 62.
Okay, she was born in 1918.
Right.
So 1918 from 62, from 1962, what is that?
Oh, I did it wrong because I got negative 1,756. So that's not it. I don't know what I did.
She was 44. She was 44
44.
when she had you, Artie, and she would have been, because this
Okay.
is something that I just know. My mom had Nola when she was 45, and there seemed to be like this pattern. I think Marcel had one of, yeah. So
And
was she
did-
45 when she had the Rita, or was she 46?
I think
she
she
had-
was, I remember her saying 45, but we can, that's easy to figure out if we knew
Well,
Rita's birthday.
so the Rita was born, December 28th. Mom's birthday was December 25th. So, and Larita was born 1963.
So she would have been, let's see, 3 from 8 is 5. She would have been 45.
Right.
No, 3 from 8
And she was
is,
probably actually 43 when I was born because it hadn't got to her birthday yet. Her
True.
birthday is at the end of the year, and I was born in the middle of the year.
true.
And
So and of course, even when I was a girl, she just was mom. She was just mother. And it's looking back that I have for a long time now, realized how young she was when I was a girl. And even looking at the picture of my grandmother, the one we kind of fought over as to whether or not it was she,
Right.
I realized when that picture of me standing with her by the Idaho Falls Temple, at the Idaho Falls Temple, my grandmother must have been in her 40s at that time. And of course, to me, she was grandma.
Right.
But these women were older and younger than we think. In any case, our dear mother, I have calculated how many months pregnant she was, but I've forgotten. But I think it's about 9 years. That's a long time, but I could be
Yeah.
wrong because I'm forgetting. But my memories of her, and I would like to stay with her very young years that I recall. I was born in 1937, and so mother would have been 19.
Right.
So you can see what a young person she was.
Right.
And daddy, of course, was 3 years older. So he was also just a kid. But I will try to start with some of the things mother told me as she was over the years about her childhood. One of the things about her childhood was that she loved horses. She never got over that. She loved horses so much. And when horses would come through town, as they did in those days, pulling a buckboard of some kind or something, she would hitch a ride whenever she could. Clearly, she wasn't worried about being kidnapped or anything like that. But that's what she said. She just loved horses. She also was, she told me about how they used to do their hair in rags.
What
That
do you
is,
mean in rags?
they used to tie their hair up in rags to make curls. And I think it was, they must have had damp hair when they did that. And that would have been when she was quite young as well. I suppose curlers weren't, the curlers I remember were pretty barbaric, but I don't think they existed when she was a girl. Mother remembers a lot of discord in her house. Her father, she developed a real strong antipathy to her father. And of course, mother's notion of illness very often had to do with low blood sugar. So she thought that maybe Grandpa had low blood sugar because he would be in a rage if he couldn't eat. Now, these are just things that she said, and this is secondary because I am not she. It's interesting that Nita's view of Grandpa was very different than Grandma's, than our mother's. She remembered Grandpa being very impatient with Grandma. She remembers the two of them fighting.
You're talking about Nita now.
No, Mother.
Okay,
Yes. And Nita's was younger than Mother.
right.
I don't know by how many years. So Mother's childhood was happy in a sense because she had friends and they played and they were unconfined, as I was also as a girl. You just went off and did fun things because it was a pretty much rural town at that time. And it was also a beautiful town, very gracious town with wonderful Victorian houses along Main Street, big wide lawns leading to the street. It was a self-sufficient town in the sense that they did have a post office. And I think a gas station, I don't recall. But in any case, though, almost every house had, well, I'm exaggerating. I'm just saying what I don't know. A lot of houses, let me put it that way, had vegetable gardens, large vegetable gardens, but also they had large flower gardens. And so, and there were huge trees all along Main Street. And of course, their home was 903 East Main Street. And as Marcel said yesterday, we used to walk from the church down that broken sidewalk to Grandma's house, Grandma and Grandpa's house. And I myself have very lovely memories of soft summer evenings with a breeze and hearing the neighbor's radio across the street and an occasional, very occasional car coming. And those were nights that I spent with Grandma, that I slept over. And I would sit at the window and just watch and listen. And those were wonderful times. And the picture of Richard that you showed us yesterday was hanging above Grandma's bed. And now I realize she was a young woman. She was just in her 40s. And I have felt really sad about Grandma and Grandpa for so many years. That what a wasted life to have such antipathy towards your mate in both their cases. But in any case, Mother's memories. Marcel is better at this. When Grandma was giving birth to Bruce, Bruce. Mother was supposed to do something to help. I can't recall. But Mother just kind of collapsed on the stairs. I don't want to say much of this because Marcel seems to remember it so much better.
So our mom collapsed on the stairs when her mom was giving birth to a little brother Bruce.
True, and I guess Grandma would have been upstairs in the bedroom. And Mother, it seems to me Mother was supposed to do something to be helpful. And it seems to me Mother felt badly that she had not quite succeeded. She wasn't very old. Bruce died, I suppose you have that there too, don't you? When Bruce was born.
I can find it.
So Bruce died shortly after his birth,
Mm-mm.
or
I think he was, I think he was a toddler.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Let's see, did I do
So,
am I sharing my screen or not?
no.
No.
Oh,
When I read Grandma's
What,
autobiography,
that's probably the best sort.
she talked about, and I don't know if she talked about witnessing, actually seeing the baby being born, and that she was given a task. I think she was trying to clean, and the doctor was boiling water and wanted clean rags, and she used a rag to clean in the kitchen, and the doctor just chuckled and said, okay, we're going to have to boil this longer. Maybe that's what you're remembering from her story, where she felt like she just didn't get that task right.
I don't remember all that, and I read her autobiography quite a long time ago, but I know from Mother it was a traumatic kind of thing.
Bruce was born in 1932 and he died in 1934.
So he was 2 years old. Okay, 1932. Well, our grandmother was she was in her 40s at some point.
Yeah.
In any case,
And our mom would have been a young
Mother,
teenager by then.
yes, probably 13 or 14 or something. 1932, 8. She would have been. In any case, the things Mother did as a teenager, what you would never guess. Our sweet little Mother, she and her friends used to go to the Snake River in the winter, actually in the spring, the Snake River, when the ice was breaking up, and they would jump from one bit of ice to another as it was breaking up. Now, I just can't imagine Mother doing that, but she said they did crazy things. It's a wonder of what we lived through. In any case, that was a very fun thing. Of course, Mother loved dancing, and she had a friend. She probably mentions her friend in her autobiography, and I know she mentions her friend in the recording that I made. Jimmy, I think her name was Jimmy, and they had. It seems to me like they had a really good time. I don't have much more to say about Grandma's girlhood. I know it was hard. Her mother worked so hard that she would pass out into the night trying to can or just do all the hard work, because for Grandmother Chandler, I have a memory, but I'm not sure if it's a memory or if it's a story I read of making candles out of lye and bacon grease or something. But it isn't a strong memory, so I can't say that. But even when I was a girl, Grandpa used to go milk his Guernsey cows, those cows with the big eyes, and bring the milk back, and Grandma would strain it through a strainer, and I can almost hear the sound, and she'd bottle it, and the neighbors would come and pick up milk for, as I recall, 10 cents a bottle. One of the nicest memories I have is having strawberries from their garden with cream and sugar melting over the strawberries, sitting at the dining room table, which had an oilcloth on it with strawberries and green leaves. Grandmother's home was immaculate. and everything was so shiny. And she, in the summer, always had a bouquet of flowers. She and Grandpa,
Excuse me.
they had a huge, huge vegetable garden, and they had large rose garden, and they had beautiful and fragrant peonies. And in the backyard, they had trees that were so heavy with fruit, they always had to be, well, at least I remember them being propped up. Grandma's grandfather, Percy George, the story is, and I guess, I don't know if my mother remembered this or if this is something that she was told, but he was outside at whatever home they lived in, and he was pumping water from the pump outside, and lightning struck, and the soles of his shoes were burned, and he was knocked out.
Wow.
That's a long way back. I can't verify it, but that's the story I remember. Mother adored her mother and worked by her side. And she told me, Grandma would say, Mary, you're so tired, go to bed. But she just wanted to stay with her mother and help her do all the chores that needed to be done in those days. In those days, of course, it was a wood stove. Washing was at best with a wringer washer, and probably not always that. It could have been with a washboard. And everything was done by hand. Sewing, of course, canning. Grandmother canned and canned. Their basement was full of shiny bottles of canned goods. And those, and the basement was an earth basement under the house. So that sort of surrounds my ancestors, my grandma, who was always also, grandmother was made fun of by Grandma Compton, but also by her Chandler relatives, in-laws.
So why did Grandma Compton make fun of Grandma Chandler?
Because Grandma Chandler wore a bra. When bras first came to be, Grandma Chandler wore a bra and she wore a corset. So she was always as straight as she could be. And Grandma Chandler and Grandma Compton could have used a bra, but she didn't believe in them, I guess. So she didn't wear one. And Grandma seemed to be, I'm sure, in the eyes of the Chandlers and our Grandma Compton, just a little bit uppity, perhaps. And that's what the Chandlers thought about Grandma. But Grandma was the daughter of, and I can't think of her name. What was the name of hubby? What was her name?
Grandma Chandler's mother?
Yes.
Was it Ada?
No,
let's
Ada
see.
Henrietta Whitney. No, hubby.
Let's see. Hazel Hovey, Mary Ann Hulse was her mother.
Okay, Mary Ann Hulse. She immigrated from England, and she came with certain ideas of being a lady, at least as I have gotten it from Mother. And that's what our grandmother was. She dressed, I never saw her in anything but a pretty house dress, nylons. They were, of course, thick, and heels, like about an inch or so. They were sort of durable heels, but nevertheless, I can hear her step on the hall room floor because of the way she had to walk with those heels. And she always had, or it seems to me, a handkerchief tucked under her sleeve. And she always smelled like roses because her lotion was a rose lotion. So I can remember her in the garden early in the morning, dressed just like I've told you, working in the garden. And I think Mother held her as an ideal. Her home, Mother always wanted her home, unfortunately, with all of us, to be just like her mother's home, and everything to be ladylike. And well, she married the wrong man for that. He was the son of Grandma Compton, who very much like me, had stacks of things around, and very much like Daddy. Grandma Compton's idea of keeping house was altogether different than Grandma Chandler's. And one is not better than the other, because I can see that you can be a slave to your home, keeping everything spotless and shiny, and trying to be a lady.
Right.
I think it came quite naturally to her. Grandma Compton had no heirs. She was, being a lady, I don't think, well, I think when you look at her early pictures, she certainly dressed well. But as I recall, she was a really different sort than our Grandma Chandler. Grandma Chandler, by the way, was affectionate. She used to put me on her lap and hold me, and I could hear her heartbeat through her chest, and listen to my aunts argue over politics. My mother and my aunts in the kitchen. And Grandma took care of me when I got sick at her house. And I remember it was very tender. And she asked me at that point, "Don't you have a slip, child?" And our petticoat, whatever she called it, and I didn't. So she sat down at her sewing machine that you had to, it was a treadle sewing machine. And she made me a slip as I lay on 2 chairs under blankets and pillows and things. Anyway, there was affection in that house, even though the 2 of them, Grandma and Grandpa, at that point in their lives didn't have affection. But Grandpa Chandler, would sit us cousins, we were very little, on his knees and bounce us and sing, "Take me out to the ball game, take me out to the fair." And also another one about St. Louis. I can't remember. And he gave us blackjack, and Beeman's gum. And Marcel and I still, when we see that, which we seldom do on the shelves, we have to have it because it's such a memory. So going to our dear mother when she was young in my life, I just remember what I told you before the last time we talked, Artie, was Mother and Daddy both were so young, and they were surrounded by cousins and sisters. I don't know about friends. I just know about the cousins. And across the street from us, when we lived in the little house above the creek, was Uncle Will and Aunt Lida. And I told you about Uncle Will. He threatened to shoot our dog.
Oh, yeah.
I think of him as not a very nice man. Their daughter Louise and their daughter Carol.
This was the Aldreds?
The Aldreds, yes. They were cousins to Mother. And I can't remember Barbara and Lucille that much in that house. Anyway, but Mother and her Chandler, so to speak, Chandler cousins would have, and her sisters, there was, as I just remember, lots of laughter and giggling. And Louise lived next to us. She had moved into a trader home and added on to it. And she was quite artistic. She painted on her cupboards beautiful flowers, as I recall. And I remember a night over at their home, just across the driveway, pulling taffy. And again, just lots of fun, lots of laughter. And Peggy and Dorothy were her daughters. And they were our friends and our cousins, our second cousins, I suppose they would have been. And we used to among other things, many other things. We would compare breast sizes.
Okay. You and your cousins.
Well, I suppose Marcel was in on it. Can't remember. I don't know that happened more than once. I suspect.
And you would have been how old at that point? I'm like,
maybe 5, 6 at the most.
okay.
So I think it was probably an even Steven thing.
Right.
Anyway, I don't remember very much, except that is where the house we lived in when Daddy got his pump organ, the beautiful pump organ. And Daddy was very involved in scouting. Also, Daddy worked at a grocery store downtown. And I can remember sitting on the sidewalk watching him paint the windows with, I guess, today's special or something. And the beautiful lettering he did with wonderful swirls and just beautiful. And he had to deliver groceries. So he had a truck, a kind of a pickup truck that had a canvas top. And I remember riding in the back of that truck and smelling that canvas top. I suppose we might have occasionally ridden in it. I don't know why. We had our dog Duke at that time, and Daddy used to bring home big slabs of meat. Probably they were discarded, hopefully. And I can remember Daddy holding the meat up high so that Duke had to jump for it. And I don't remember if we were poor or rich. I know we weren't rich for sure. I just remember they were young and I was young. And the baby at that time would have been Bruce, because there's a picture of Bruce sitting on the doorstep at Aunt Lita's house across the street. He's a chubby little boy, sitting on that doorstep. It was the kitchen doorstep. So he was probably 2 or something at that time.
I wonder, I am not sure which picture you're referring to. Can we look at pictures for a second and see if we can find it to make sure I've got, is that okay?
And
Yeah.
these are all memories in Wesier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
This is, so after Mary and Berkeley married, they lived in Wesier for several years, long enough to have you and Kamillia and Terry and Bruce all in Wesier, or had they gone other places?
All of us were born in Wesier.
All of you were born in.
I mean, all 4 of us, and we were all delivered by Dr. Henscher and Mrs. Assa. She was a midwife from I'm not sure, Denmark or Switzerland or someplace. And so she delivered all of us with Dr. Henscher's help. Afton was born after we moved to Montana. But Mother was very pregnant also. I remember that.
Hmm.
Artie, can you make that bigger? If I'm supposed to spot this, it's going to be hard for me.
Okay, well, let me get to the right ballpark area and then we can pinpoint it. So hang on a second, and then I will make it bigger. I'm trying to look for a picture that's
He's just
similar.
a tubby little boy sitting on a doorstep. And he doesn't look particularly happy.
Do you happen to, okay, this is a little squirrel of a distraction here. Do you have any idea who this is?
I wish I could enlarge it. Can you enlarge it?
I'm working on it. There's several photos of this guy, and I have no idea who he is.
He does not look familiar.
Okay.
He really doesn't. the lower part of his face is what makes me not be able to tell who he is.
Okay.
Um,
All right. I don't know who he is either. Outside, see, and again, some of these photos I got off of Terry's Flickr page, so there's an outside chance it's a Wilkerson
hmm.
and not a Compton or a Chandler or whatever.
You know, there, as you said, Wilkerson, he could have been a Wilkerson, that guy.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of President Wilkerson.
So Lene, I've got a lot of photos in here, and I don't have them all documented yet. That's part of my task, is figuring out, giving our best guess as to who's who and so on. Now this photo, do I have this one documented? I
Boy,
don't.
it's really vague. I can tell that's Vicky in the middle.
Oh,
Wait,
really?
just a minute. Can you make it? Is it as fuzzy as it looks to me?
It is fuzzy. There it is, big. That's as big and as clear as I'm going to get it to be.
Well, maybe you should make it a little smaller and just see if it gets, I'm sorry, if it gets clearer.
All right.
I'm sure that's Vicky, and the one with the kind of jumper on, it looks like. And I can't tell who, let's see, is that?
It's
just
not a
a-
high quality photo, no matter how you look at it.
Well, I would have Vicky's family look at this, and also Marcille.
Okay.
My guess is those are two Daniel's children because of their dark hair. But and it's possible because you know, Marcille and I both really envied Vicky. Look at, I want you to notice she has little Buster Brown shoes on, and she has those,
Okay.
and she has white stockings instead of brown, and she has beautiful ringlets. She was just, you know, over the top for us.
Okay. All right. Now I'll go back to seeing if I can find this picture of Bruce that you mentioned. No. I might not have the picture you said, although again, I've had a number of photos that I've been trying to pinpoint. I thought, wait a minute, is that one of the ones I've been trying to document? But I am not seeing it.
You know, on my computer, see that picture of Bruce right there with the four of us?
Yes.
He looks a lot like that sitting on that step.
Okay.
And I would imagine he was about that age, maybe a wee bit older. So we lived in the little house across from Aunt Lita and Uncle Will. And when that was taken.
Who is
Okay.
this?
Okay, so that's mom holding Bruce. At least that's what I have written down. Mary Nola Chandler Compton with Bruce.
I see no picture at all.
Oh, you don't?
No.
I don't know why you don't.
Her hair looks shorter than I've ever seen it in a picture.
I wonder if it's tied up in the back or something.
I do see it now. No, Mother had her hair bobbed at times. There's another picture of her at about that age where it's kind of, I think it was kind of in style to do bobbed hair at that time.
But she definitely looks very young. I mean, if she wasn't holding the baby and you told me she was 15, I'd say, okay.
I don't know how old she was. It looks like Bruce is maybe a year and something.
Yeah, so she's early 20 something.
Mother, she's not in her 20s.
When
This Bruce is her brother.
Oh.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Okay. All right,
That
let
makes
me change how I've documented this then, because I thought it was her son, Bruce.
Mm.
Okay. Because I was thinking, man, she looks so young. Okay, with her, I gotta put over her little brother, Bruce.
Yes,
And this
Now, I
little brother died, right? When
right.
he
He
was,
got,
so he
Yeah,
would have
so
died shortly after this picture.
I
It was-
dated this as 1944, but that's because I thought it was Bruce, my brother.
no,
I got the
That-
wrong Bruce. Okay, hang on. So this
that would have been
so,
before I was born.
so
That was
this
probably,
was probably 1934.
perhaps, yes.
That's when little Bruce passed away. Oops, wrong
So
one.
that-
Where am I at? Okay, I gotta redate this. Gotta keep track of this stuff when if I don't do it
Okay.
now, I'll forget to do it later.
And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you doing it at all.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate the clarification because she does look so young. Man, how could she be in her early 20s?
Well, Mother stayed so young. I told you before that she used to get rid of salesmen at the door by saying, when they say, "Is your mother home?" she'd say no. And that was when she was a mother of, I don't know, maybe 5 children, who knows?
Okay. Well, I don't see that picture of Bruce. If I
I
see
don't
one,
either. And, you know, I have a lot of old photos I had on my 2 computers back. And David has uploaded everything each time. Now, this is Grandma. Oh, I think this is Grandma. with
yeah.
her
So you were
cow.
talking, I thought I'd go to this because you were talking about their garden and all that stuff. And so that's our grandma, Hazel Hovey Chandler,
Mhm. And Grandpa.
Grandpa Chandler, and their cows.
And that's the way Grandpa was always dressed. And I can't see Grandma as well, but it looks to me like she's wearing a dress.
Yeah, she
And
is.
she was, well, of course, they all wore dresses then, but she was always, I wouldn't say ready for tea, but, you know, she always looked prim and, you know, and she had a favorite cow. And there is a story that Grandma saved a cow's life that had gotten into the alfalfa and too much of it and had gas. And she had to puncture the cow with, I don't know what.
Wow.
She had to have guts and physical strength to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she knew, but I guess she saved the cow's life. This is not the backyard that I remember. I don't believe. They moved from wherever they lived before, which I never did know for sure, to 903 East Main Street.
So was this before the yard that you knew them in?
I think so. Now, there were sheds in the back. There was a chicken shed, there was a coal shed or wood shed or something. And a lot of fruit trees and an alley behind. And this could have been it. But I don't know. It could have been it. Could
Okay.
have been that. But it was a very self-sufficient home and yard in that there was a wonderful flower garden. There was a wonderful vegetable garden. There was a cellar full of gunny sacked root vegetables and fruit and vegetables, you know, jars, and cows and chickens, and just all the things that require a whole lot of work.
They all require a lot of work. So this is our mother. Let's see, or is that which one was our mother? This is our mother here, I think.
Right there. Mm-hmm. Isn't
As
she
a
cute?
very little girl.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
the young man isn't Grandpa, he's an older brother, right?
yeah, that's Kenneth.
That's Kenneth. And if you want to know what Larry looked like in his boyhood,
Larry who?
Kenneth's son.
Oh,
Larry had really, really red hair and lots of freckles. And this is Kenneth, and Kenneth had red hair, curly, thick red hair. And that's Kenneth.
maybe that's where I get my red hair from, because
I think you get it from Grandpa Chandler. So this would have been Grandma.
yeah, so
holding- and that
grandma's right
baby.
there.
Let's count these children. There's
Let's
mother.
see. It says Hazel Hovey Chandler with children holding Robert is what I have written down. Kenneth on right. In the front is Maxine, Wallace, Nita, and Mary. So Maxine is right there. Wallace is there. Nita and Mom. And so Kenneth, and then she's holding Robert.
Mhm.
At least that's how I have it. That's
I
my
think
the information I
is-
have.
if Nita put that on there, then Nita is no doubt correct. Look at how these little kids are dressed. Look at Wallace.
Yes.
Well,
Well,
I'm sure they were dressed well, just because Grandma would have made sure that happened.
right.
Okay,
All right. Well, exit the photos for now. We've had a number of Zoom calls, Linnea, where we just have gone one photo after another, after another, after another, trying to figure out who's who, what's what.
and it's too bad that we have to guess and make
Yeah.
everything 1965.
Right.
Anyway, let's go back to well, I've diverged from mother to our ancestors, that is to say our grandparents. But I do think it's important that we remember them. Grandpa, I want to describe Grandpa.
Grandpa Chandler.
Chandler, yes.
Okay.
Grandpa Chandler, as Bert Hovey, Grandma's brother, told us when we lived in Wesir, he was extremely bright, never had to study in school. And I think he was. And he was also quite, I don't know if intellectual is the right word, but he was very inquisitive regarding, well, he read all the time. He loved to read. And his bedroom was stacked with magazines and newspapers and books. And he was the only Democrat within miles, probably. And the picture of Roosevelt hung above his bed. That's where Jesus should have been, or the temple. But anyway, I'm teasing. Richard was hanging above Grandma's bed, and Roosevelt was hanging above Grandpa's. I don't know if we can take much from that. But Grandpa was a passionate Democrat in those days. And the story is from Mother and from Nita, there was very little light. Of course, the electrification had happened, obviously. So there was one light globe in the dining room, and it hung from, I'm sure you've seen this, or maybe you haven't, but I have, from a cord, and it was hanging over the dining room table. And that was it. And so Grandpa would take his books or whatever he was reading to the school and read in the, I picture him in the basement with maybe a kind of heater or something down there, but there was light. Also, I remember Grandpa is quite friendly with the teachers. They seemed to enjoy him and he enjoyed them. And there was one teacher in particular. He used to take me on rides on his bike on the handlebars. And he took me to this home. I remember lots and lots of kind of a wild assortment of flowers in the front yard. And this lady and he were talking in the front yard. And they seemed to me to be very friendly. And she was a teacher at the school. And I don't know which school, because he was the janitor at the East Side School and also the high school. I just remember a kind of curiosity on my part as to who she was. And in any case, he was an intellectual. He could have been probably, had he had the education, he could have been a professor of something, certainly maybe political science or something, because he was very into politics. And I can remember lying on their living room floor with Grandpa sitting in a big rocking chair, big brown rocking chair. If you can picture this, with brown leather seat and kind of flat arms. And he always wore I think no arched shoes, just flat shoes. And they were sort of work shoes. I can picture him rocking in his big flat-soled shoes, and I'd be lying on the floor, and Robert and Wallace and Kenneth maybe would all be arguing with him over politics. And
Interesting.
Of course, I wasn't taking sides. It was just, I was little enough to just know that was what was happening. And then in the kitchen, I told you, sitting on Grandma's lap and listening to my mother and her sisters and sister-in-law, Betty, arguing over politics. So it was, and
people are still arguing over politics. It hasn't stopped.
It hasn't stopped. True. In any case, though, that it wasn't as if, I mean, these people were not just apolitical. It wasn't the shoulder shrugging kind of people. They really were involved and interested. I don't know how involved, but interested anyway. Grandpa didn't go to church for a long time.
Oh, really? Grandpa Chandler.
Right.
I don't know why I asked. You never knew Grandpa Compton, so of course it's Grandpa Chandler.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Well, Grandpa Chandler didn't, because he drank coffee, and I can remember his coffee pot on the coal stove. It was very antique. I think he had to boil the water. I can't recall actually, but anyway, he'd have his cup of coffee in the morning, and I guess that's what someone told me, probably Mother. The reason he didn't go is he wasn't worthy. He drank coffee, but he didn't go for a long time. The first time I know of him going to church was after I was married, and we came back to see them when we had 2 children. So, and then he was dressed for church at that point. But I don't ever remember him going to church. He was a big man, quite big. His son Kenneth and Robert were both fairly tall. And Kenneth especially was a big man, and Grandpa was a big man. He wasn't overweight particularly, but he was not underweight. He always dressed in work clothes, and that's bib overalls, a long sleeve shirt, a hat, and those laced up flat shoes that he wore. And I was very fond of my grandfather, and I of course thought I was one of his special children, the grandchildren, but come to find out, Anne thought that too, so who knows. You just never know. But I think it's a gift when you make everybody feel like they're your favorite.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's when a child feels like they're a favorite and they're loved, then someone is being loving. Yeah, you just can't get that without someone.
Yeah, that's true. So that's, you know, anyway, so those are my, off the top of my head, more or less. Now, as we moved around, I've already told you about Butte, and I just want to just pick out memories. They're not particularly in order, of Mother and Daddy. Marcel mentioned that in Anaconda, something about them riding bicycles. Mother, we were standing, the church was not an LDS church. It was one that had been taken over by the LDS, but so it was a red brick church with wide stone steps. I remember a number of people standing on those steps, and suddenly there was this hooting and hollering. It was probably after church when people just stand around.
Wait. So this is Anaconda?
This is Anaconda.
And Anaconda is in
Montana.
Montana. Okay.
Yes. And this was after the war, just after the war, when we moved to veterans housing units in Anaconda. And so this hooting and hollering, and everybody turned to see Daddy with Mother on the handlebars flying by. He was riding the bike and she was on the handlebars. It's a really fun memory for me. And it just tells you how young they were. They were still in their 20s. Well, Daddy
Right.
he might have been 30. I don't know. But we know how young that is, don't we? Anyway.
Yeah. That's when I got married.
You were such a slowpoke.
Just the way it happened.
Yeah.
I didn't
In
mean
any
to be a
case.
slowpoke.
And then of course, when we lived in that same housing units, I think I mentioned to you that I remember Daddy and Mother roller skating on the sidewalk behind our place, and remember seeing Daddy pick Mother up and skate backwards with her and twirl around with her as he was skating. And that's a really lovely picture as well of them as young people. And it was in that house too, when Mother pulled Daddy on the sled behind the car. She didn't know how to drive. She didn't really learn how to drive till Toppenish, I think.
So mom was driving and Dad was in the sled.
Dad was on the sled. Daddy was on the sled. And we were looking out in those days, little back window, a kind of an oval shaped back window, laughing at our father, who was on his tummy on this sled. And Mother was driving, and she came to a big puddle and did not know how to stop. Or I think she might have known how to stop, but not sure she should, considering Daddy was on a sled right behind. So we went through the puddle, and I just remember us children laughing so hard because Daddy got splashed as we went through that puddle. It seemed to me there was a bit of a to-do after that, but I don't recall. But that was Daddy. Marcel seemed to remember them both being pulled, and I don't recall that. But, we have slightly different memories because we were two different children.
Right.
And she tends to remember street names and people's names and how to get from here to there. And I don't, unfortunately. Anyway, these are the young, I'm trying to remember really young things that were so fun to do as children and parents. When we lived in Yakima, I remember Mother bouncing a ball. Now she would have been in her 30s, 34, I think is what I recall, bouncing a ball and singing a song, a kind of a ditty that went something Olario. And when it came to Olario part, she would swing her leg over the ball and then catch it. And she'd bounce it and then swing her leg over the ball. And I wish I could remember that. I'm sure it goes back, 100 and 200, 300 years. But it was, it's just to tell you how young she was.
Yeah.
And she used to sing Little Brown Jug, I Love Thee. And another song, It's Time to Kiss Goodbye, I think. And Daddy, of course, used to play the piano in Yakima. Those kinds of songs. And I remember too in that house, also in Toppenish, but even more in that house, Daddy popping popcorn. He'd pop huge amounts of popcorn and sit in front of the fireplace that was burning and eat popcorn. And popcorn was always a Christmas morning thing too. We were extremely poor, and Mother often said, children don't plan on very much for Christmas. I don't know that those were her words. I'm sure they weren't. But she let us know that it was going to be, a little Christmas. But they always came up with something. Daddy would get a second loan on his car or on something. And usually it was on Christmas Eve or a day or two before Christmas, the last minute. And then they'd get to do some shopping. And the smell of popcorn, along with Christmas candies, is still for me Christmas in a way. In Toppenish, what was I thinking? I was thinking, Mother, again, this was one of those Christmases where we were just not to expect much. But she was obviously thinking ahead because she got Marcial and me Avon. It was a lotion and a powder. And we have both been searching for that fragrance ever since.
Oh, really?
Yes, I can almost smell it right now, but I can't. And I know I would know it if I smelled it. Anyway, it was such a wonderful treat. And the other thing she would give us, or they would give us, is a whole bag of chocolate kisses. I don't remember any exceptional other thing for Christmas, which is too bad because I know that they went out of their way. But those two things I definitely remember. And the chocolate kisses were a tradition for quite a long time. And the Avon was just that one time. It was just wonderful. And I used to buy Avon as a young mother and wife for a long time. Each time I was looking for that fragrance. I didn't find it. Mother in Toppenish was, I told you, often she didn't have anything to wear to church. Or often she just didn't have time to get herself ready for church because she was getting all the rest of us ready for church. But I do have a picture of her in my mind sitting at her dressing table with her cold cream and other things, getting herself ready. And she was such a pretty lady. She really was. She was in her very early 30s. And so imagine Mother in her early 30s, young. She had by then 6 children, Nancy. She may have had 7 because Jay was born in Toppenish, but she still had a very nice figure, and she was still so young. And the gold suit she bought when she was in Wesier to go visit Daddy in the army, she still had, and I can picture her wearing that in Toppenish as well. Such a pretty mother.
Well, I can only imagine. I can look at the black and white pictures of her when she's younger, but that I know doesn't do her justice.
No, it doesn't quite. And Daddy, and another tradition on Christmas morning, if we didn't have snow, and we very seldom had snow on Christmas morning, but was to go to the vacant lot right across the street and play baseball. And Nita was with us one Christmas. And so Nita and Daddy and all of us kids, and the neighbor kids probably too, the Baker boys, we'd have a baseball game in the vacant lot across the street. And so you can picture, Nita was very young. She wasn't married yet. And Daddy in his very early 30s.
And you were living where?
In Toppenish, 602 South Beach Street, Toppenish. Yes. So with all the hard times, and we certainly did have hard times, Daddy purchased 100-pound sack of wheat. It was for the chickens and it was for us to eat. And so Mother would soak the wheat all night and then boil it in the morning. I should have extremely strong jaws because that takes a lot of chewing.
Yes, it does.
I don't know why they didn't think to grind it. We ground wheat for a lot of years, Carmen and I. But anyway, so I can still taste that. It's not very flavorful, but if you put honey on it, you know.
Yeah,
And then
it needs a little honey or something.
honey, and we had goats, so we had goat's milk, and in Toppenish we did have goats, rabbits, chickens. I think I told you.
It sounds exactly like what I had in Missouri. In Missouri, we had goats with goat's milk. We had rabbits, ate rabbit meat. We had chickens, we ate chicken meat. Yeah, I guess I was recreating some of that in my little place in Missouri.
Yes, you were. And Daddy was not, he was not really one to kill anything. So I do remember him trying to chop off the head of a chicken, which was a disaster, more or less. I think from then on, anytime a chicken needed to be killed, he got someone else to do it. I don't know how. I can't picture him doing it that many times. But I remember feeling very sad for the chicken because it still would flop around without his head. And that was just a gory sort of thing. But Mother, of course, would dip that chicken in hot water, boiling water, you know, pull out the feathers, pull out the innards, all of that just to get ready for Sunday dinner. But there was no chicken dinner better than that. It was wonderful.
Yep, there is something about fresh chicken that, I mean, we had the best chicken I've ever had was the chickens we raised in Missouri, and we butchered them and cooked them, and they were really good.
And we had rabbits too, and I can't remember. I'm sure we ate them. I know we did, but I don't know who killed them.
I did all the killing in my family. I don't know how many rabbits and chickens I killed. When my wife's family came to visit, and they didn't want anything to do with eating rabbit, so we didn't tell them that it was rabbit. We just told them it was chicken, and they ate it and said it was really good. And it wasn't barbecue chicken, it was barbecue bunny, but they didn't know.
Well, you know, the closer you come to a real face you can recognize, it's harder and harder. And also then, I told you that Mother in those years really loved to debate, and she came by it honestly, obviously. She and the missionaries really enjoyed her company, and the missionaries were older then. Some of them were, you know, way up in their 20s, and she was just in her early 30s. So and of course I didn't know that she was such a pretty lady at that time. But anyway, we often had the missionaries at our house. And I can just remember Mother folding diapers, snapping diapers. Can you picture that? You know, just snapping them and then folding them, folding clothes. And having
Was she snapping somebody with the diaper? With like a
No.
That's what I had. I pictured she was snapped at the missionary or something with the diaper. What do you mean?
No.
If she wasn't snapping somebody, what was she snapping?
She had it was the flannel diapers, the square diapers, and you just take two ends of it and and snap them to get all the wrinkles out, and then you fold them over.
Oh, okay.
That's probably the wrong word, but anyway, Mother really was the workhorse in Toppenish. She did the gardens, she did the canning, she did the cooking, she did the washing with a wringer washer, and she had to heat the water on the stove in a tin tub. And the stove was a coal stove, and
A lot of work.
an awful lot of work. And of course, she was pregnant. We can just guarantee that. She was
Right.
she was pregnant with, would have been Jay, because Nancy was already born. But in any case, she still loved to debate, and it wasn't politics. It was about the gospel. And debate is probably not the right word, but discuss.
Right.
So and they were at our house a lot. They enjoyed Daddy's company too. And I think maybe I told you last time, he roped the missionaries into helping him bail out the cesspool. I cannot imagine more dedicated missionaries than that. Pretty awful. And of course, as a girl, I couldn't have been more than 11. It was just a phenomenon, a very stinky one. But
Yeah.
And looking back, I just think, why didn't he get, the reason he didn't get some company to come and do it, clearly. But what did he do with all that stuff? That's what I can't figure out.
So what was the cesspool? Was that like the septic system? Is that what we mean? When they helped him bail out the cesspool? Were they
The
empty?
It's called a septic tank also.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I
Yeah.
thought. That would
Okay.
be stinky.
That'd be awful. And I can't think of what he did with all that. It just doesn't make sense that he just dump it to the side. Anyway, yeah, that was a stinky job. But Daddy had charm, and he was always fun. He was always the master of ceremonies and the one to turn anything and everything into fun whenever he could. I think though, as time went on and life took its toll on both of them, well, especially after he lost Mother and he lived here, I think he still loved to have fun, but he looked back more with
Right.
maybe appreciation and melancholy somewhat.
Yeah.
My girlhood, of course, is remembering him. Whenever we had a piano, he was always at it on Sunday mornings. And singing around the piano was kind of what we did. Also, Marcel and I were supposed to sing a duet in church, and we practiced and practiced. And then Daddy was supposed to play for us, and this was in Toppenish. Well, I'm trying to think, was it in Yakima? It might have been Yakima. We got the giggles, and we couldn't stop laughing. We just couldn't stop laughing. And so Daddy, of course, can't carry a tune. And I think he not only played the song to the end, but sang it. I'm not sure. We'll have to ask Marcel. That was Yakima. And I was so stage fright. Whenever I had to give a talk or something, I would take off my glasses so I couldn't see the audience.
So hang on. So about how old were you with this giggle singing thing?
Well, we lived in Yakima, so I was probably 13, 14, 15. Not sure.
Okay. I'll just say around 14.
And Marcel can harmonize. I cannot. I can just sing whatever the next person to me is singing. And I can do it.
That's me too.
I can do it quite well, but but I can't harmonize. I don't know if that's strength of character or not. And in any case,
Well,
Mother-
that's exactly how I am. I can sing really well, whatever the person next to me is singing. But if I'm supposed to sing something different than the person next to me, it's a roll of the dice whether I'm hitting the right note or not. It's just, who knows?
Well, in Yakima, I also remember it coming to my attention because Mother told me she was so shy. It was really hard for her to make conversation with people she didn't know. And so she had a kind of a reputation of being withdrawn, a little cold, perhaps, when in
Okay.
fact she was just shy. And there was a woman, Daddy was in insurance for some time while we were in Yakima before he went to Rich Plan. Well, that was Yakima, wasn't it? Anyway, and they went to some conference, and there was this beautiful woman whom Mother admired greatly, very pretty, alabaster skin. Of course, Mother shouldn't have been even looking at her. She herself had alabaster skin. But this woman was very pretty and very shy. But the two of them somehow got together and they were able to become at least friendly in that setting. And she talked about it when she came back, how nice that was and how they understood each other. They were not stuck up. They were not, there was nothing hauteur about them. They were just shy. And of course, the very opposite of Daddy. Daddy was very
Right.
outgoing, as we know. Daddy loved to talk at firesides in Yakima, and perhaps Toppenish too. The firesides we used to have are very different. I don't even know if you have them now, but these were in individual homes. And there was usually a speaker, and there was some kind of refreshments. And then we kids would stick around and sing. And in Toppenish, I remember Jack Wright had a ukulele, and he would bring his ukulele. And so after all these serious kinds of things took place, we would sit and in their whatever home we were in and sing wonderful old songs, like, I mean, really old songs, like There's a Church in the Wildwood, etc., to the ukulele. And they were great bonding experiences between the young people. And I remember Daddy was very fond of telling the story of the ghost what train. Anyway, can you remember that at all?
No, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, it was about a covered wagon train with whatever pulled them, mules or something. And it was called, and he called it the ghost, whatever it was, let's call it the ghost donkey train, which was not what it was, but it was a spooky story. And he loved telling, that.
I don't remember that at all. I don't know if I heard it as a kid or not.
I wonder if Marcia can remember that. Maybe she will. The something ghost train. But Daddy, of course, didn't quite fit the role for firesides. I mean, I don't know that he based anything on a scripture. He was just very entertaining, which is what he really loved being.
Right.
And those firesides were very special, even in Yakima as well. And sometimes I do remember on one occasion when Carmen and I were going together, one fireside, we ended up caroling to different people's homes. It was much more free at that time.
Right.
The last fireside I attended was in Salt Lake, I think, with Robin, and it was in the church, and it was an entirely different, really different feeling. It wasn't a fireside. It was a meeting.
Right. I remember as a teenager having firesides in the homes of the people in the ward. All of us youth gathering into somebody's home, and somebody would talk to us. And but you're right, they don't really do it in people's homes. They do. Yeah, I think they pretty much do them in the church, and there's no fire to be beside.
No, it's not a fireside. But the having a homey situation and parents who could welcome you and make you feel comfortable, and
Right.
that was really very special. A really special memory for me. Another very special memory for me is MIA when we had when we were preparing for, say, the Golden Green Ball or something, and there would be a lot of dancing, teaching us how to do certain steps and so
Right.
on. That was also great fun. Anyway, going back to Mother and Daddy, things became, I mean, for all of my youth, until I eloped and got married. I think you did want to know about my elopement, didn't you, Artie?
Yeah, at some point I would love to have you repeat that story. You mentioned it to me once on another call that I was not recording at the time.
I think it figures really importantly into Grandma and Grandpa's history. One of my daughters eloped a couple times, actually.
She did more than once.
It's super important to, the story, like it feels really important to my own narratives.
Yes, I can, and I had a daughter elope too, and I grieved for 6 months at least. Mother and Daddy both really loved Carmen. As I said, Mother loved to discuss, we'll call it that. And still she is folding diapers. When Carmen used to come and pick me up, and he would be, well, we started dating when he was a senior in high school. And he was so special. I fell in love with him when I first saw him, which was when he was 14. And I guess I was, 12. I guess he turned 15. I remember because I gave him a birthday card for his 15th birthday. But I was still blind. I didn't have glasses at that time. So blind is not the right word, but really didn't see well. And he blinked a lot. And I thought he was winking at me. But I was wrong. Anyway, he was just such a handsome young man, as you well know. And I was this girl who didn't think she was anything special at all. I didn't, for sure. And so I remember there was a boy in my life. His name was Johnstone. I can't think of his first name just now. He liked me a lot, and I didn't care for him very much, but he was always around our house. And he was a member of the church. Carmen had a pickup, a little black pickup, and he brought us to my house. Marvin was his name, Marvin Johnstone, and me. And we were talking with Carmen, who was driving, and it took him a minute to answer any question. It was like he had his mind somewhere else. But in fact, I think he was just thinking. And at that time, I just didn't know what to think. But he was sweet, and I just thought he was wonderful. Anyway, and Mother just loved LaRue Hardy.
That's tall. Carmen's mother.
Yes. That is to say, she admired her greatly. They didn't know each other well. But LaRue had dark eyes and dark hair, and she was tall and slender. kind of olive skin, really quite beautiful. And anyway, that's what I remember. And Carmen was highly respected in our little ward of Toppenish. I think I told you about Carmen having rheumatic fever, did I?
I'm not remembering that. I don't remember. I don't think so.
Well, then I have to back up a bit. I broke my arm when we were picking cherries. We were gleaning cherries. This is Toppenish. And Mother was expecting Jay. Oh, I think I told it on the messages. Anyway, Mother was expecting Jay, and she was quite pregnant. And so we were gleaning cherries from somebody's orchard. And my grandmother Compton was with us, and she was holding the branch that I was on. I was standing on a branch and reaching for cherries above me. And the branch broke, and I fell. And I broke my arm, and that sort of stopped that day. And it was the 4th of July. And so we drove into Toppenish, and the only doctor who was in town was an obstetrician. He set my arm right away. And that was not the thing to do because my arm was very swollen. So within a short while, I was able to reach into my cast and scratch my arm. And, it was really loose. It wasn't holding my arm in place. So it healed incorrectly.
Oh,
And so when the cast was taken off, and that was what the situation was, I was going to have an operation to reset my arm. And I know that Daddy was just panicked because that would mean more doctor bills.
right.
And I felt very guilty at that time about it. Anyway, he had me carrying a bucket of rocks around to straighten my arm. He also created a kind of pulley.
Dad did?
Yeah. You know how creative Daddy is.
Okay.
A kind of a pulley so that when I was lying down, it would hold my arm up straight. But nothing worked. So ultimately I was operated on at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Yakima.
Okay.
And I and Daddy went to a jamboree, a Boy Scout jamboree, and as I recall, it was Chicago. But to earn money for that jamboree, he had really crazy kinds of activities like pancakes in front of the post office. And I think they were blueberry pancakes anyway, and serving them to people for a certain amount of money. So this was a Boy Scout troop activity. And in any case, I think there is a newspaper picture of him somewhere boarding the train with his scouts going to the jamboree. And while I was in the hospital and Mother was in the nursing home, having given birth to Jay, Daddy went off to this jamboree.
Wow.
So I remember being so desperately homesick. I just pined away from my family. And I promised I would do the dishes, never complain, and that I would be good to Afton.
Okay.
I promised myself. Afton was all over the place. She climbed, she did all kinds of crazy things, and she was quite accident prone. And I don't know why I thought I should be good to her, but I did. Anyway, so on the way home from picking me up from the hospital, well, we had to go back a couple of times, of course, to take my cast off, etc. But Daddy was bishop at that time, and the Hardys had just moved in and to our ward, and they lived in Wapato. So we stopped in Wapato, and then I was able to see Carmen. I don't recall it much. He was in a bunk bed, and he had played basketball when he had a sore throat, and he came down with rheumatic fever.
Oh,
So that was another little occasion when I got to be in his presence. When we moved to Yakima, there was another boy who liked me a lot. And I didn't care for him, but he wanted me to go on a date. And I said, the only way I will do it is if Evelyn, his sister, who was my friend, goes with us. And the only way she would go is if she had a date.
Okay.
So I don't know where I got the courage, but I called the Hardys and I asked Carmen if he would like to go on a blind date with my friend. So from there on, so he did. And he kissed her goodnight, and I was in the back seat with Clyde. I just couldn't believe it. But anyway, he came. he came back. We were having awards, something or another, and Daddy was master of ceremonies. And someone came in to say, into this little banquet at the church, that Carmen Hardy was in the foyer. So my friend Evelyn, she jumped up and he said, no, he wants Kamillia. Anyway, that was kind of a bump in our friendship. But anyway, so from then on, we dated and fell in love. And he was in senior high school at that point. And then he went off to Washington State. And oh, that was painful. I can't tell you. I can still feel all those pains of youthful love. He'd be gone for 2 weeks and he'd come back and we'd have a weekend and then gone for 2 weeks. And we wrote letters and just pined away. So when I was 14, he asked Daddy if he could marry me.
So wait, he was going to college while you were 14 years old?
I probably wasn't then. We're only 3 years difference.
Okay.
But
I was
we
gonna say
married.
I was a little confused there. I didn't think he was 6 years older than you. That I'm
No,
6 years older than my wife, but I didn't date her when she was 14.
Well, he dated me when he was 14 for sure. But and maybe I was 15. I can't recall.
Anyway,
But
if he's in college, she's 18, and so you're at least 15
I'm probably
by
15.
by that
Yeah.
point.
Anyway, I was waiting breathlessly in the kitchen with Mother while Daddy and Carmen were alone. And Mother tried to have a little bit of a serious talk with me, saying, Kamillia, marriage is not for children. And I remember being quite insulted. I did not think of myself as a child, but anyway. Well, of course, Daddy said no. And he said he would trade me for a steer. Carmen raised steers at that time. But of course, it was all a joke. But we did get engaged when I was 16. He went hitchhiking with a friend to follow the wheat harvest from New Mexico up to Washington.
Wow.
So he could earn enough money for an engagement ring for me. And he did. And we became engaged. And the plan was for us to be married in the summer of 1954. And by then, Mother and Daddy had moved to Spokane. And Daddy was working for Rich Plan.
So that's how much further away is that then? That means what, as far as, I don't know. I don't have an image of how far away these places are from each other.
That's like about 3 or 4 hours away from Toppenish, right?
We were in Yakima at that time, but it would be about the same.
Yeah, actually that today it would take about 3 or 4 hours to get between Yakima and Spokane, I think.
But we didn't have the highway system.
Yeah, it would have been a lot longer.
Yeah, it was the better part of a day because we just had 2-lane highways at that time. So they moved to Spokane. I stayed in Yakima to finish, to go to summer school because I was trying to graduate from high school early so I could get married. And And I had a wonderful English class that summer. But anyway, so we went to Spokane. Carmen asked Daddy about getting married. And Daddy and Mother both, it was very hard times for them. And I'm puzzled by that because they lived in this, what I think of as a beautiful pink house, the prettiest house, except for the one that I saw in Virginia that they ever lived in. But they couldn't pay their tithing. They were not up on their tithing. So they couldn't pay it in time for us to be married when we had hoped to get married. And that was a terrible heartache for us. I can only imagine for them. Now, of course, I see it a little differently. But anyway, so Marcel was dating Ken, and Ken was in Yakima, and Carmen was in Wapato. And so we made a trip by bus to go see them together. And I'm sure Marcia will have a little different story here. But we decided, and I was staying with the Meanies, good friends of Mother's and Daddy's, while I was there visiting Carmen. I don't know where Marcia was. Where was she, for heaven's sakes? In any case,
He wasn't at the Meanies or whatever they were.
No, Dale and Lucinda Meany. Anyway, we wanted to get married, and we just couldn't stand the thought of parting again. So we went to Goldendale to get a marriage license. I had to lie. And oh, that's my son. We'll just let him go for a minute.
Okay.
Anyway, I had to lie about my age. And the Meanies, they were obviously not very good friends of Mother's and Daddy's, took us to Sunnyside on the 31st of July, 1954, to be married. And I think I told you that, and so we were married by this justice of the peace. And we both got cold feet. I mean, we had to wait. He couldn't see us for about an hour. So we sat in a park across the street from his home, and we were just, both of us, quite frightened. And then we went to this justice of the peace, and we were really quite frightened, and we shared it with each other after, not before. Because this was forever, and it really hit us at that point. But we went through with it, and when we left and the Meanies were driving us home, we were in the back seat of their car, and I told you, Artie, that we had the closest thing to ecstasy I have ever felt.
Even up to this point, all your other life experiences, that was the closest things to ecstasy of your entire life.
Looking back, yes, I would say.
Okay.
Truly. We were just so, both of us. And the wonderful thing is it was both of us. It wasn't just one of us.
Mm-hmm.
We were just in ecstasy that we would never have to part again, that we would not have to say goodbye. It was, it's hard to describe, really. But I don't think I've had an experience like it, anything like it since. I've had lovely experiences, but not like that. And it's nothing we expected. It just came upon us. And
Right.
The wonderful thing is it came upon both of us, not just one of us.
Yeah.
So that's the story of and of course, our parents, both of our parents. Carmen's parents were at a family reunion in Vernal, Utah. And my parents were in the Pink House in very bad, very poor circumstances. They moved to Dishman shortly after, and Dishman was a great step down in terms of the kind of house to live in. And I have grieved since then, not for marrying Carmen, but for hurting my parents.
Right.
I really have. So Marcille was sent with the message. This is her story now. Because she went back.
Really quick.
Uh-huh.
You said something about your parents just being kind of in dire financial straits and not able to pay their tithing, and somehow that figured into did that figure into your decision to marry when you did? I'm wondering, what the logic was there for, like, how that figured in.
Well, we couldn't go to the temple. We couldn't have a temple marriage until my parents were able
Okay.
to catch up on their tithing.
I see. Okay.
And
And
that was our intention.
Okay.
And 6 months later, we took a quite harrowing trip. First to the Idaho Falls temple that was not open. We ended up in the Logan Temple where we got sealed together. But that was our logic. We just couldn't stand to be apart again.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And the story of Romeo and Juliet, I remember when I read it, I was taking a Shakespeare class here, and I promised myself I would not cry. I said to myself, these are just words. They're only words on a page. It's just black and white on a page. But I cried. And I know I had Carmen and I in my heart.
Thank you.
When I was a little girl, I was in the 3rd grade and had learned to read and loved to read. And I checked out a book, and it was a child's book. So it was Romeo and Juliet, but, written in children language.
Yeah.
And that is my first experience with having a haunting literary experience. Like, I walked around haunted for weeks after I read that story. That, and then there was also a poem about Wink and Blink and a Nod that just enchanted me. I was just magic. But Romeo and Juliet just captured my imagination and traumatized me. So
I'm sure that you were very young for Romeo and Juliet. Well, anyway, that's the story of my elopement. And the sad part is I hurt my parents, and we hurt Carmen's parents. But I do want to add to that. Carmen, of course, was looked upon with such respect by people in the church, people in the school. He was always, I'm sure you knew him as fairly formal. Well, he always was. And he was always a gentleman. And he was always educated. I don't know how else to say that. But he could quote scriptures like no one else. He right up to the very end. And he was extremely thoughtful in terms of thinking as well as thoughtful. So my parents loved him. They really did. And they were not sorry to have him as a son-in-law. It's just that they were sorry for how it happened.
Right.
And in fact, later, we must have by then had Melody, because we lived in a wonderful little apartment with Mrs. Gruelle as our landlady. And she looked after us because we got married with nothing, as you can imagine. I think we had pie tins for plates. We had a spoon and a fork and a knife, and I think that was about it.
Right.
Our landlady went to the reception, and she was 75 at the time, and really a very idiosyncratic woman. And she went to her granddaughter's reception, and it was filled with all kinds of wonderful gifts on the table. And she had taken a set of dishware, and she decided she was not going to leave it. She brought it home, and gave it to us.
She stole from somebody else's wedding reception and gave it to you.
Well, it's what she had intended to give to her granddaughter, but decided she didn't need it.
Oh, she was going to give it to her granddaughter.
Yes.
Oh, I thought she just took a gift
Yeah.
off the table and
Yeah,
gave it to you.
that would be such a great story. You know, this idiosyncratic older landlady who loved Carmen and Kamillia, just like pilfering half the gifts from the reception for her favorites. Darn it.
I'm sorry. I can't do that for you. Anyway, so she left it at our door, in front of our door, and she would often leave a pie or a cake, and she would write a little note, from your crazy neighbor, or your something like that. She was just so dear to us, and I'm sure we probably look like orphans to her, but anyway, I went to school. I finished my last semester at high school, Pullman High, and he went to college, and we were on different hills in Pullman. I could sit in my classes and look out the window over at the hill that the college was on and pine away because Carmen was way over there. So anyway.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate, all of your sentiments and the conflict and all that you went through there. But I need to wrap up. It's getting towards 9 o'clock, and I need to check in with my family. But this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Kamillia, for sharing all of your memories and your insights. And there's so much here.
It's so much wandering. I'm sorry, I just wander around, but
that's okay.
Yeah, I think this is a really great way to pick up memories, because one memory will sort of domino into another, and you get good coverage.
Yeah.
You've been good about telling us where you're at and who's involved and about what time it was. So I think it's okay that we went all over the place. And it's interesting to me that we're ending right about, your childhood with your parents ended when you married.
That's true.
This is, you've got lots more memories, but this is the end of a phase. And then when we pick up again, you'll be starting with your married life memories of your parents.
I have a feeling that what is most interesting for this project, Artie, tell me if I'm wrong, is memories that relate to our parents. Am I right on that, Artie?
Yes, but at the same time, we'd love to get everybody's complete life story. But yeah, the intention of what we're doing here is memories that relate to our parents, but also memories between each other. At some point I want to sit down with Larita, because Larita and I have stories that are unique to our time at home when it was just me and Larita.
Really? There was a time when it was just you two at home?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
There was for a while Joseph Alden went and lived with Nancy in Nebraska, and then when he was he left for a mission when I was still in high school. So yeah, there was a few windows of time when it was just Larita and I. Anyway, and those, maybe similar to you and Marcel, those are memories that just Larita and I share.
Well, of course you were older, and so you have your memories are probably a lot clearer than the memories of Marcel and I as little toddlers. But I think it's amazing that Mother had to wait that long to have just two children at home.
Yes.
Anyway.
I honor and appreciate her sacrifice, and I recognize it as a huge sacrifice that she chose to bring us into the world later in life, when I assume they thought they were done, because there was a 7-year gap between Chad and Alden. And that would be hard to pick up and have 3 more kids. For some families, 3 is all they ever have, and here they have another family after having a family.
And that's and we sort of are separated out that way. But there was a little bit of a gap between Afton and Nancy.
Mhm.
But I think of the first four as kind of sharing the Wesier years and
Right.
the Toppenish years. And then there came, Nancy J and Annette and I left home and Marcel left home. And so it seems like there were like three separate families
Yeah.
in a way, although there was carryover in every case, except maybe for you and Larita. So that must have been very special for you and special for Mother to have that relationship with just two children.
Well,
That would have been.
yeah, I certainly cherish it. But I'm gonna wrap up here. Thank you again, and let's stay in touch. And I don't know if we want to do another
Yes.
recording for you or get. I still would love to do one-on-ones with everybody, and get different stories.
I think unless I can think of things that I think would really be important about Mother and Daddy, I think this is it for me. But
Okay.
I so appreciate you doing this. And Linnea, I certainly appreciate your interest and your comments. So thank you, Artie.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Have a good night. Love you.
Love you.
Love
Good
you
night.
too. Thank you.